we haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs, not really a negotiation.
Donald Trump this morning taking aim at Canada again on the issue of trade. Let's now bring in CTV. Okay, we'll try and bring in the reaction on that. President Trump was leaving for Scotland early this morning. He was asked that question about trade. And let's now bring in CTV News U.S. political analyst Eric Ham, who's joining us. Eric, we are talking about President Trump and several comments he made this morning, specifically about tariffs. When he was asked about Canada, he says the likelihood of a deal may not be there, and Canada may be facing tariffs unilaterally by August 1st. Your take of what's really happening with these negotiations, because Canada says we are working hard towards a deal.
And again, I think what we have seen with the overtures from U.S. senators who have met with Mark Carney in the last couple of weeks, what we have seen from Carney and other Canadian leaders talking about the possibility of an agreement, even Carney suggesting that there may be some concessions on tariffs to be included in this deal. What we continue to see is Donald Trump will still make up his own mind, and a lot of what might go into what he wants, or even if he wants a deal, will actually rest on simply how Donald Trump feels at that moment, and more importantly, how he feels about Canada. And I think we have to separate his respect and admiration for Prime Minister Carney versus what he thinks of Canada itself. And again, I think this is more than just Donald Trump attempting to actually get a good deal for American consumers. It simply isn't about that, because when you look at the baseline of many of these deals, it still involves tariffs, which are taxes on American consumers. And I think what we're seeing here is Donald Trump still has a very negative understanding and an idea of Canada, and I think that could go a long way in determining whether or not we actually see a deal in the next 10 days or so.
But Eric, I want to understand, why do you say that about his understanding of Canada? Because this is the same president, as we know, who carved out a deal, and when he did, way back when in his first term, said this was a good deal for the U.S. And today morning he says, and I quote him here, "We haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where there's just a tariff, not really a negotiation." So I'm trying to understand, why would the same president who struck a deal today says this about the country that he did a good deal with?
Again, we know in terms of U.S.-Canada relations, this has been not only a relationship that has been sacrosanct and has been the envy of the world over, but what we're seeing right now is President Donald Trump simply does not have any love for Canada at this time. And quite frankly, I think Donald Trump sees Canada as not a competitor, but more as a nuisance. And I think, again, this goes back to this ongoing competition that the president is having right now with Beijing over rare earth minerals. And I believe he sees Canada as a place that needs to come under American sovereignty. And that's what he thinks. That's what he believes. Look, Donald Trump has had this idea of tariffs going back 40 years. And we have seen that, quite frankly, they just don't work. But that has not stopped Donald Trump from continuing to push for these tariffs. And I think it's the same when it comes to what he thinks right now about Canada, because as we have seen, he continues to push misinformation. And that is what is guiding him and undergirding these negotiations. Quite frankly, the president is simply negotiating in bad faith, and that is something that Canadian negotiators need to recognize. Donald Trump could walk away from this deal at any moment.